I will put at the beginning of this little clip right here. If you just want to hear the story and you don't want to hear the setup, go to, and I'll put it on the screen, this many minutes because I can't see on my uh, OBS how many minutes I'm at right now. And I thought to myself that they can't pump my stomach because I didn't ingest them. It's straight into my veins, so there's nothing anybody can do. It was pure hopelessness that this was it. And with the last few minutes that I thought that I had, I walked out in the living room. My son was still in diapers. My daughter, they were watching a Christmas movie, and they looked at me and smiled. I went over to him and I put my son on my lap and my daughter next to me, and I told him how much I loved him. And I tried to steal a few moments. Then I sent him to bed. What's up, everybody? Bryson Michael RC here, and this is a video that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, but I've never really had a platform that I felt comfortable with putting it on. I do have a Facebook, a personal Facebook. I've had a band Facebook whenever I was touring and playing music. I've had a website. I've had, and biggest of all, I have a monetized YouTube channel called Bryson Michael RC that I actually make money on. I make YouTube videos on drones and 3D printers and 3D prints and things like that, and you guys will see a lot more of that. But I made this Bryson Michael cast for two different reasons. Me and my buddy are debating on putting it, and I mentioned it in my intro video, and you guys could probably go back and watch that. But the short version is we're gonna do like a car cast type thing that we want to do, where once every 2 weeks we just get in a car and we just talk about all the different things that are going on, politics, football, college, different aspects like drugs and fatherless homes, and just kind of our opinions on different important topics in the United States. And so I started this casting channel to kind of get a little bit better at that myself, and I didn't want to do it on my Bryson Michael channel because it just has nothing to do with anything like that. So on this one's just going to be kind of my own personal thoughts and things on stuff, and I will preference this video with telling you guys that you probably wouldn't believe this, but I think personally that a lot of drugs should be either legalized or decriminalized, and there are some beneficial drugs that should be completely decriminalized that do, if overdone, cause death. Um, but that's my own personal thing. I think you do a lot of help decriminalizing it and figuring out solutions to help people rather than just sending them to jail and turning them into criminals. There's things like painkillers, and I know heroin's the far end of the spectrum for painkillers, but most people get on heroin by coming up through lower tabs to oxycodone to on and on and on until you get to heroin, because heroin is a cheaper, stronger high. Because I mean, pills they cost a lot of money. And this has been about 10 years since this story happened, and I'm really hoping that this can help people. That's my main goal in this whole thing, is to, if there's somebody else out there going through the same situation, I really hope, really hope that it can help people. And I'm kind of starting this story in an unlinear way. This channel is going to talk about my childhood growing up without any positive male role model in my life, with a very religious mother, and then on up through my childhood and kind of how social anxiety played a huge part in how I developed. Music played a gigantic part, and nu metal played a huge part in my social development, and then on into um, drugs and things like that. So we're starting at the end and we're going to be moving our way backwards. You'll eventually hear about that stuff, but I want this to be unadulterated. I don't want any opinions to be developed. I want people to just see this for as it is, and hopefully it can help people. But see, pain meds are one of those things, and this is where this story all begins. Pain meds are one of those things that my mother was on pain meds, and she needed them basically to survive. She had a lot of surgeries, and could barely function without having some type of pain meds. And when they came through and they started charging all the doctors for over medicating patients and things like that, it made it a huge deal. The doctors got real scared and they tightened up their prescriptions for pain meds. And my mom went from having an abundance of pain meds where she was able to live a completely normal and happy life to being cut in half. And where, by the end of each month, she was depressed and possibly suicidal. But that's neither here nor there. And that could be related to or not related to. It was during that period of time when you put a patient on a regulation of them and then you suddenly cut that in half. It's very, very hard on the human body to just, deal with that. So um, you're not just punishing criminals, you're punishing good people too. And that tends to be what happens anytime that these laws are passed, gun laws, drug laws, anything like that. So um, looking at drugs from a standpoint of helping rather than punishing is a better way to look at drugs. And so decriminalizing and even in cases legalizing is when it comes to freedom. And as a conservative, I think all conservatives need to believe that decriminalizing and sometimes legalizing is the better solution. If all drugs were at the very least decriminalized and not or legalized, a lot of people would lose their jobs. A lot of people would lose their jobs. But, one thing that we would get rid of is these dangerous cartels. At one point, everybody was making a lot of money on marijuana. And I believe me, the government probably wishes, and people probably wish to God, the drug of choice was still marijuana that cartels were pushing. Because now it's decriminalized or legalized in most states. Um, Instead of fentanyl, which is killing millions of people. And there's enough fentanyl coming over the border because the border is not secured. There is so much fentanyl coming across the border that every American can die twice from it. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous drug. And I'm glad I got out of the drug game before fentanyl got huge. I remember and I'll talk to you guys about the first stages of fentanyl. And I remember the first hearing about fentanyl, and it was shortly after fentanyl patches first came out and started getting really prevalent that I ended up going through my transformation from being a drug addict to being a survivor and being a recovering addict. So, all right, here we go. I tried to save it off, but we have to get to it at some point. And I've got a few of these, and you guys will hear about every one of them. But I want to start with the worst one, kind of to get people to wake up to the possibilities of drugs, because this isn't even, fentanyl is worse than anything else. Back when I was doing drugs, you could trust them. If a pill said Lortab on it, it was a Lortab. If a pill said Oxy on it, it was an Oxy. Now they're cutting them and recreating new pills, and that's what that rapper ended up overdosing on, because he knew he could take a certain amount of the real thing, and then he took the fentanyl laced aftermarket ones, and because it was laced with fentanyl, he died. And it's a sad thing, and a lot of the kids nowadays are going through that, and I'm glad that I'm out of it now because of how bad I got. I would be another statistic in the world of drugs. So this is my worst drug story of all time. So 10 years ago, let's just kind of make this a little bit better and a little bit more linear, just so you guys can tell where I got to this point at. But I started when I was younger, because my mom was on lower tabs and stuff um, for herself. She would still have 3 or 4 of them left over by the end of the month, and she would just kind of set those aside, and they had Tylenol in them. And she was real bad at getting basic things like Advil and Tylenol and stuff like that. And so, we didn't really, and I don't think she was ever really completely educated at the beginning on what Lortabs were, but when she took them, her pain went away. That was just the knowledge of it right there. And so whenever we would get a really pounding headache or be sick or something like that, we'd always get a Lortab, and it was like euphoria. One Lortab. I remember being a kid, and one Lortab would be like euphoria. But I never looked at it as a drug. I never looked at it as something to keep me high. It was just like I was feeling bad, and suddenly I was in euphoria. It was an amazing transformation. And then whenever I got better, I would just go on la di da. I love these things because they help you get over being sick. But there was an illness, there was a solution, and then I was better. That was kind of the aspect of it. But then junior or senior year, I think I got my wisdom teeth taken out. And back then in 2004, um, they weren't really that big of a topic. I mean, lower tabs weren't really looked at as, whoa, wait a second. And as being a teenager myself, I went to the dentist and I got my wisdom teeth taken out, and they gave me a prescription of Lortab. And it's not even that strong of a. Sorry, I'm gonna have to do this because it's a stressful story to tell because I really don't like to tell it. But in fact, only one person has heard this story. My wife and kids don't even know about this, and I'm not going to share this with anyone. So if they stumble on it, they'll see it. If not, they won't. That's just kind of, you guys are the first ones besides my best friend who you guys will hear about in this story, who survived all this with me. So, anyways, got my wisdom teeth taken out. I got a thing of Lortabs, free refills whenever I wanted them. So I went to school and I hated school, and I took one of them. And it was nice. I was feeling good. So I took two of them and I was feeling better. And I took three of them and I was feeling way better. To where I was basically like a zombie drooling on my desk. And I got kicked out into the hallway because I wasn't paying attention. I basically went to sleep on the floor, and I remember the principal came up and kicked me and made me go to the office. And while I was in the office, I told her, I was like, "Well, I got my wisdom teeth taken out. I'm just in a ton of pain." And by that time, the bottle was empty. And I was like, "I really need to go get more of these pain meds." And she was like, "Okay, go ahead." And just let me go out, get in my car, and go get pain meds. I mean, that's how easy it was. Um, and I had just gotten the pills the day before, and I went to the dentist, and they gave me free refills on it. I mean, there's no questions asked. The whole thing I finished in a day, and they gave me, and I went back like 4 different times, 4 days in a row, and they still filled it up and gave them to me. And I remember how amazing that felt, how good it felt. And that was really my first introduction to an alteration of your humanity in life. But I didn't become a drug addict right away. No, there was no addiction to it. I didn't. Once they finally gave me my last refill and told me I couldn't have any more, I just came off of them. And I might have went through the flu at the time. I thought maybe I had the flu. I didn't know anything about being dope sick at the time, and I don't really remember because getting sick back then wasn't really that big of a deal. You get sick for a few days and then you're good. So, and I was young, so I may not have. I'm not 100% sure. But it was a long time until I got back into it. So throughout the first years of college and my adolescence and my early 20s, really wasn't too much on that. It was smoking weed. I mean, we did everything under the sun, mescaline, cocaine. We did everything. Um, Everything. We're huge fans of um, that movie, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Huge fans. And we wanted to try everything. Everything we could get our hands on. And we did. Me and my friends, man, we really did. We went, and we'll talk about some of those stories. And as the videos are made, I'll put them up here. And you guys can click on those as I'll come back and update this video as those stories are made where you guys can click on them and look at them. I think that'd be a really cool thing. It makes it a little bit more linear. But anyways, it wasn't until after my daughter was born. Well, I was a really bad coke addict for a while. We'll talk about that later on. But I was a really bad addict to cocaine because I got it for free for a while. And when my daughter was born, I had a bag of it, like a little tiny baggie of cocaine left, and and gave it to a friend of mine and said, I'm never doing this again. And was going to live a straight existence and not ever do anything except for maybe drink beer and stuff because I really liked partying at the time. And so she was born, and I'm just trying to make this quick. Sorry. She was born, and then me and my well, she's my wife now, but we weren't married at the time, and we went through some really bad stuff where I was drinking way too much and partying way too much. But I was a functional parent. It was just, after my daughter went to sleep, that's when I went out with the guys, and then I was struggling because I'd work and then come home, take care of my kid. I never let her see it. As far as my daughter's concerned, she never seen any part of that. And to this day, I don't. She kind of, I think she probably thinks I'm one of the lamest people of all time because I kept her hidden from it. I didn't want her to ever think any less of me. And I didn't really think any less of me at the time because I was partying. I mean, it wasn't, it was just drinking and stuff after she was born. And we were playing beer pong and just having a good time at each other's apartments and stuff. But we partied way too hard one night, and I ended up getting arrested because this guy lied about me. That's neither here nor there. We ended up beating it in court and stuff. Um, but he lied about me, and I got arrested that night. Because of that, we got evicted from our apartment, and I went to live with my buddy Charlie. And that's where most of this stuff started. That's where I got really into, I started working at a casino, and me and a guy that were there got really big into taking Lortabs and Oxy, any type of pain meds that we could get our hands on. We just loved working on it, which was a bad idea because I was a security guard at the time, and I was probably blitzed out of my mind 90% of the time that I was there. It's quite ridiculous. Just 21 years old. Uh, Thought I was a cop, but I was just a casino security guard. And I was living with my buddy Charlie, and we were partying every single night. And me and my wife had split up right after we moved out. She couldn't take it anymore, me going out every night and coming back home 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. She was ready to be married and have kids and live that normal life, and I wasn't. Still felt young. So my summer that me and her split up before my son was born. And I'll tell you, I mean, there's millions of stories there that I will tell you about, but I'm just going to mention in this one because this is aiming towards one specific story. Um, there were so many nights where I should have been able to see where this was going because it just got worse and worse and worse. And I remember the first time I got dope sick, I went to a person's house and I didn't have anything, and he was like, "You want to come over and hang out?" And I told him, I was like, I'm too sick. I think I have the flu, and I told him my symptoms and stuff. And he goes, "How long has it been since you've had any oxy or anything?" And I was like, "Man, it's been a long time." And he goes, "Come over here and I'll give you one because you're just dope sick." So I went over there and he gave me one. I was perfectly fine after that. So I mean, that's the first time I realized that I was an addict. I was dope sick, and I knew what made it better. And la di da, go along. One time I was struggling with being dope sick because I was broke. I was working at Love's. Me and my wife are back together. Moved out from Charlie's, and I'm going to tell you guys all about that. I mean, that was a whole almost a year that I lived at Charlie's. Several different events went on that you guys will understand a whole lot more when I do tell you guys the stories of Charlie's house. Um, my buddy Diddy, by the way, started coming over at that time every night playing Madden and hanging out, partying, and stuff like that. He was actually with a girl and had a kid at the same time too, and they ended up splitting up because of that whole him coming out and partying every night, doing all that different stuff. So he kind of fell into this whole addiction with me, and every time I tried something new, he tried something new. So I was struggling with being dope sick one night, and I had a friend that was like, "I have these Dilaudid," and I was like, "I don't like Dilaudid. I've tried them before, and I've tried taking the pills. They don't do anything. I don't know why people like them so much. There's some people who love them, and I hated them. God, I hated them. They didn't do anything. Uh, so I was like, and he goes, "No, you're doing them wrong. You're doing them completely wrong." And I was like, "Well, how do you do them? You know?" So I went to his house and he put it, a couple Dilaudid in a spoon with some water, and he held it over a flame, and it just melted down into the water, and he took a needle in and plunged it out into the needle, And then one of them, it was a buddy of mine, and then a guy that he knew. They drew it. Man, they were just like, man, this feels so good, and telling me all about it. And he said, listen, you're dope sick. I'll give you one of these for free. You just got to let me put it in your arm. And I was against shooting up. That was one thing. I was cool with taking pills, cool with smoking stuff. Did not want to do needles. Didn't want to shoot things up. I always thought that was dirty. That's what. Still at this time, I had that mindset of I'm better than other people. Like I still haven't tried crystal meth to this day because I think it's a dirty drug. All my life. That's why when I was on cocaine, people would be like, try this meth instead. We actually went out and tried to buy some coke one time, and the guy that we bought the coke from gave us a bag and took our money and split. We looked at the bag and we were like, holy shit, this is meth, and we just tossed it. $180 for this meth, and we tossed it. Charged us for the same price, and I knew that meth was cheaper. I knew that meth was dirty, but I didn't want it. I didn't want to try it. Didn't want to get onto it. I've seen way too many just nasty drug addicts that were on meth. Screw all that. Didn't want it. So I told him over and over, and he goes, "Man, it's gonna get you better. You're gonna get it. Stop being dope sick." And at this point, I was like a day or two in. It was like the worst it could be. Restless legs, sweats, cold. I mean, it was my body was going through an array of symptoms that were just brutal. It's brutal, heart, mind, soul. I mean, it takes over your whole body when you're in the throes of being dope sick. And finally, after a while, I said, "All right, just do it. Just do it. Just get a brand new needle, wear gloves, do something." And I remember looking away and putting my arm out. And when he did it, when he injected it in, it was a different feeling that I've never had in my life. Off of all the opiates that I've ever tried, uh, it was like a hand just consumed over my brain of pure joy and euphoria. My muscles tightened up real quick and let go, and it's almost like I had to sit down, and my whole body felt warm and at peace and full of joy and happiness. just and it's crazy going from being extreme dope sick to being just pure euphoria and joy. It was an amazing transition to me, and that's all it took. That's all it took. Before I left his house, I bought a whole bunch of Dilaudid, um, and brought some needles home with me. And I remember that first time sitting in my bathroom trying to stick myself, and I had so many sticks and blood running down my arm and stuff because I didn't know how to do it. But when I finally got it in and going, then I felt so much joy just from getting the needle in, because you have a fight or flight thing when it comes to hurting yourself. I've tattooed my arm uh, several times, and when you do it, you kind of shake a little bit while you're doing it because you have this you can't hurt yourself type of thing going on. So that I mean, I spent like an hour in the bathroom trying to poke myself with that first needle, and then as I got better, it got better. But I knew my buddy Diddy wouldn't be cool with it. I knew most of my friends wouldn't be cool with it, even though at the time almost all of my friends were opiate addicts. That's how I got them. I mean, one of my friends, he passed away here recently, and that's been a real hard one. Chris, he was a huge aspect of getting them. Uh, Everybody over at what's his name's house. We used to go to my buddy's house and party in the basement all the time, and him and his friends, and then Caleb, my guitar player. He was one of my first Bryson Michael guitar players and guitar player in the band Curry Field that I was in. I mean, all of my friends. Uh, Diddy was living with a buddy of mine that I did pills with at the casino. He was a manager, and I was a security manager, and me and him gave each other stuff back and forth, opiates and stuff. James and all of his friends. I mean, everybody I had encountered was an opiate addict. Basically, we were all on it. But I knew all of them would judge me because we all had the same type of thought. We were all kind of more well-off kids. Well, I wasn't anywhere close to being a well-off kid, but all my friends were. So it had me in that mindset of shooting up is dirty. And so I kind of hid it for a while and my cell, and I had a connection who had like an undeniable supply of them, so it was never going to go away. They were always there. Um, and so finally, I talked my buddy Diddy into it, and he said I could never stick myself, but if you'll do it, because he was going through the same thing, all I could get was the Dilaudid because that's all I cared to get. I didn't want to get anything else, and I was his main connection. So I told him if he ever wanted to do any again, he's going to have to do this because I'm not getting anything else. They were by far cheaper, readily available, and felt better. There was no sense in buying anything else to me at the time. So he said, if you come over and do this for me, then, you know, I'll do this with you. So I plunged a needle into his arm and got him into it. And we basically went on this spiral out of control of just buying way too many and doing way too much. And me and him had a crazy pills night before this that we thought was going to be our last hurrah. And it was just like tons and tons of different. We call it the crazy pills night because I don't know how either of us survived it. And that's going to be one of the big major stories in this whole epilogue of drug addiction and stuff. And I'm not going to get to that though. We got into doing this Dilaudid, and yada 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 goes about a year. It goes to the point where I mean I remember on Thanksgiving Day I was in Newkirk at my wife's family's house and all I could think about was getting more Dilaudid. And in the middle of like eating and stuff with the entire family, I drove back into town, picked up my connection, went and got some more, went out, shot up, went back. You know, like I mean, it consumed my everyday life. It was like go to bed, and I worked in the afternoon, so 3 to whenever. I was working at a gas station at this time, so my life had taken a drastic turn. You guys will hear all about that. Wasn't making very much money, so getting a cheaper deal was always better. Um, but my life consisted of waking up in the morning and searching, trying to get a hold of this guy who had it, and then finally getting some, going to work. There were sometimes I couldn't get a hold of him until after I went to work, and he'd bring some to me at work and stuff. I mean, it was just a daily thing unless I overbought, which I never did because I was broke at the time. I mean, I don't know how we survived. I really don't. I mean, and at this point, I had 2 kids. You know, my son was born. He was about 3 years old. My daughter was about 6. They're 13 and 16 now, but so this was about 10 years ago when this specific story happened that I'm telling you guys about today. I cut my dealer's legs out because I was so tired of having to look for him that I knew his guys, the guy he was getting them from. I knew his daughter. I went to school with her, and I just reached out to her on Facebook, and she was like, "If you need to go talk to my dad, just run over and talk to him." And I was like, "All right," went over, knocked on the door. I said, "Hey, I'm one of your daughter's friends." She said, "Come on over and talk with you." And so me and him started talking. Turns out he didn't like that guy anyways that I was going through to get him because that guy had taken a bunch of free ones and never paid him back. He owed him like thousands of dollars. In fact, he was paying him back. He was charging me extra to pay him back what he owed him. So they were actually cheaper going straight to the source. Me and him struck up a deal, and it was funny about that time. The guy that I was getting him through showed up, and he was like completely shocked that I was there. And then basically he got cut off, and he was still an addict too, but he was getting them for free, overcharging me and my friends, and trying to pay back what he owed. And then suddenly I got the cheaper deal, and I was only paying for me and my friends, and we were paying wholesale because I wasn't overcharging my friends, and he wasn't getting anything. And he kept telling me, "Remember all the times I got him for you?" No, cut him off. I didn't care. You know, he wasn't really a friend at the time. There's when we get more into this, I'm going to tell you about some of the people you meet when you're doing drugs and how people that are drug addicts don't have the best intentions, and how this guy stole 2 phones of mine, um, stole one of my TVs, and talked about stealing some other stuff, and I had to take some action against him actually. But that's neither here nor there. He was a very bad dude. It's nobody to feel bad about at all. Cutting him off. He was a pretty ugly dude. Now I'm basically the guy. All of my friends are getting it through me, and I've gotten all of my friends into doing it this way, and we're having a blast, man. It's great. It's great. but now I'm getting too much. And he's actually offering me free ones, because the guy didn't really have any friends, the guy that had him. So he had him because his brother, I guess, got a nonstop prescription of them and just gave them to him and said, just this is just to help you out to make some money. So he wasn't really making much off of it. He didn't really care. He made pretty good money anyways, from what he did. So he didn't have any friends. And so if you would go over there and sit on his couch and talk to him, he'd throw you three or four extra ones, you know. And because I was making him so much more money now, he was loaning some out for me. And it got to a point where I ended up gifting him. I gave him a uh, a really really old Mauser that he really liked. He came over and checked out my guns, and he was a big gun fan. And I had this really old Mauser from World War II, and he really really liked it, and I liked him. He was a good guy, and he really was. I ended up gifting it to him, and he called it square on everything that he ever gave me for free. Um, that's after all this, but anyways, now you know the setup for this story. So, but you can skip ahead to this point. But so here's the story. Now that you know the lead up. So I was getting way too much, and I had a full blown addiction, full blown. But I didn't ever have to worry because I always knew where to get it. He was always home, and he only lived about 5 blocks from me. So I mean, I could walk there if I wanted to. And a lot of times, if he was going out of the way, he'd drive to my house and just walk up and hand me, just give me some or whatever. But I had this constant flow, and when you become the guy that everybody else goes through, you have way too much because he started giving me a bunch ahead of time, just in case I needed it. And I was at this point, these are the strongest allotted you could get. And I started out with just doing one every like 6 hours, so about two a day. And then I got to the point where I was doing like four every 6 hours. And it was a full blown extreme addiction. Um, and it was like I was putting it all in these gigantic spoons and three needles at a time and would go in, and I was functioning though. Now remember at this time, no, and to this day, my wife and my kids have no idea. Well, they have some sort of an idea because I have kind of sat down and explained it to them because I am on Suboxone and I've been on Suboxone for a long time. This is part of my recovery. I have Suboxone because I don't ever want to get, and what Suboxone does is it not only blocks out um, if you try to do anything, any type of opiates and drugs, but it also, if you do any on top of it, it'll make you super sick. So it basically, once you're an addict, especially to opiates and Lortabs and things like that, or heroin or something, once you're an addict, you crave it for the rest of your life. There's no way around it. There's no sugarcoating it. Once you're an addict, I crave it to this day. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen, you know, stuff in movies. I like the show House, but I can't watch it because he takes painkillers the whole time, and it just makes me want them really bad. So once you're an addict, you're an addict forever. And so I like to have them on hand in case something like that happens. My buddy's the same way. And this, sadly enough, this story that I'm about to tell you wasn't the last time. It should have been, but it wasn't the eye opening last time. It was eye opening, but it wasn't the eye opening last time. It was a culmination of things that got me to quit. Mainly the supply running dry. That was the biggest part. But we'll get into that. So at this time, we were trying to figure out different ways to expand, like extend the high because it wasn't lasting as long. And when you're a drug addict, that's kind of what happens. You're always chasing the high. Like best way to explain it is cocaine. When you do your first couple lines, you get sent to here, and then as it wears down, you kind of come down, and then you do another line, but you only go up to here, and then you come down, and then you do another line, and you only go to here. To where at some point, if this is your even line, you're below it, and you're only getting up to still below it. That's kind of how drugs work in the human body. I don't think. your body wants you to overdose or wants you to take too much. So I think personally, and this could be studied scientifically or biologically or something, I think somebody should do a study on it, but I think your body probably has a an instinct in it to not let you get to a certain point. And that's why people overdose and dies, because they're always trying to hit that higher point. And you can't get there unless you do way too much. And then if you do way too much, you end up dying because your body doesn't ever let you get to that point again. So we had experimented with a few things, and one of the things was methadone. Methadone is a thing that helps you get off of them, off of opiates and stuff, but they can actually be used to get high as well. And methadone, supposedly, the way that we were hearing about it, and I was doing a lot of research online, a bunch of stupid research. Don't ever believe drug addicts online. Don't do it. Don't ever do it. It's just stupid. But there is a way to break the methadone down chemically and mix it in with your broken down Dilaudid, and the high would last longer. And we tried it. I didn't want to overdose and die because I didn't know what it would do. We did the whole process and tried it, and I'm not going to explain how to do it on here because I don't want anybody to see this and not be using this video as help, but be trying to use this video to, you know. So we tried it, and with just one Dilaudid and the broken down part of methadone, and it did. It lasted longer. Like instead of only lasting for 2 to 4 hours, I mean, it lasted for quite some time. So I took that as a go. I mean, it was a go to not only um, make my regular dose, not only make it last longer, but to make my regular dose last longer, which is like four of them. Every so many hours, it's like four of them. And so the next time I went in, we did it again, broke down, uh, and then I put it in with my regular dose, and immediately when that hit my vein, my temperature spiked, and I could feel it. Mind you, oh, I didn't even set this up right. This was uh this was Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve. My wife was working. She was a night shift. She was a poker dealer. It was just me and the kids, and two and or 3 and 6. And no, it would have been 2 and 6, I think, or 3 and 6, because my daughter was born in November or in October, so and 3 and 6 or 3 and 7. Anyways, so this was Christmas Eve, and there's presents under the tree. There's Christmas stuff everywhere, and my kids are out in the living room. Uh, God, this sucks. There's a bit of shame in telling the story because number one, they don't know, and number two, everybody who talks to me about my kids constantly says how good of a father I've been, and this is one of the more shameful moments, I think, the one of the most shameful moments because I've never let them experience any of this or see any of it happening. They were too young to know at the time and probably still to this day have no recollection of it, but had it gone the worst way possible, they would have been the ones who came across and it would have affected them for the rest of their lives. But I took that regular shot. My temperature immediately spiked, and I knew something was wrong. My skin went from being like a whitish tan to bright red. My eyes, the pupils in my eyes went from being like regular to being a tiny little dot. And then they just expanded, and none of my ira was left. And my whole body started to tremble and shake, and I was in and out of consciousness. I could feel the black coming over. I freaked out. My heart started racing. And just then I prayed, God, I don't want to die. I don't want this to be it. I messed up. Really, I didn't really know what else to do, but I could feel everything start breaking down. Everything. It was the most horrible feeling I think I've ever had in my life. And I walked out into the living room from the bathroom, and I thought to myself that they can't pump my stomach because I didn't ingest them. It's straight into my veins, so there's nothing anybody can do. It was it's pure hopelessness that this was it. And with the last few minutes that I thought that I had, I walked out in the living room. My son was still in diapers. My daughter, they were watching a Christmas movie, and they looked at me and smiled. I went over to him and I put my son on my lap and my daughter next to me, and I told him how much I loved him. And I tried to steal a few moments. Then I sent him to bed, told him goodnight. By this time, I was burning up. I could feel everything going in and out. And it was cold outside, so I thought maybe if I went outside, it would cool my body down. So I sat out on the front porch for a while, and I was still so hot, so I stripped off all of my clothes, and it had to be like 30 degrees outside. And I was sitting there in a chair out on the front porch, and I just went, and I could turn around, and I could see my body sitting there. And I started going. And I remember thinking to myself, this can't be it. This can't be it. I don't want my kids to find me. Jenny's gonna come home and she's probably gonna find me out here. And all those thoughts go through your mind. And I heard a voice that just said, not now. And I came back to my body and I woke up and I was freezing cold. My skin was ice cold. And I came back inside. I had been out for a couple hours. It seemed to me only a couple seconds. And I started a warm bath and I got in the bath and it was like a shock to my cold skin, and just literally picked a mole right here. And I literally just in anxiety picked it. It's bleeding. But anyways, I gotta get, I don't know why I did that. That's weird. I got out of the bath after a while after I finally got my body right. And I still didn't feel like I didn't know this was going to be this emotional. I've only told this story out loud one time. But I got out of the bath and I went to bed still thinking, I don't know if this is going to be it or not. And I prayed and I prayed. And then I woke up the next morning and I was perfectly fine. And to me, that was a very, very, that was my first overdose. You would think there wouldn't be another one, but drug addicts aren't intelligent. Drug addicts are fairly selfish. I mean, you have to be selfish, but I got up the next morning and got the Dilaudid, decided no more methadone breakdowns are going in it. Texted my friend, said, not a good idea. And kept on like I never learned. And it took a few more months to almost a year after that before we finally stopped and went and got help. And I never told him about that until I was questioned about whatever happened with that time we were going to try this. And I told him the story and said, oh, I'm glad you feel like you saved my life. I said, yeah, I'm pretty glad too. And we went and got help. We got put on Suboxone, followed the regimen. We were gonna go through and get put on Suboxone until we didn't need anything anymore because both of us were really, really scared about withdrawals. I mean, by this time I'd went through withdrawal several times, and it's a scary, scary thing because it's a brutal feeling. And it's been about 10 years. And I decided a while back that, it never got easier. 5, 6 years, it never got easier. Every time I see lower tabs, I think, I wonder if these, because here's one thing, once we got onto Lauded and started shooting it up, lower tab and stuff never worked anymore. I mean, we tried to switch back a couple times, because some would come around or something, we'd get some for free or something like that. And they never did anything. So we were kind of just convinced that this is all we could do. And it dried up and went away. But we still thought about it. There were still things around. I got rid of every friend. I mean, I stopped hanging out with everybody. Everybody, I mean, there's got to be people around nowadays that say Bryson just disappeared. Diddy just disappeared. They just stopped hanging out with us. There's probably people that dislike us because we just stopped. Went from being the life of the party, connection for things to not answering phone calls or text messages and stuff because we were dedicated. Me and my best friend, I wanted to save his life and he wanted to save mine, and we were dedicated to doing it. But 5 to 6 years into it, we still never stopped wanting it. It's always been in the back of our minds when you see it or hear about it or anything like that. So we've just kept getting Suboxone. And it's not necessarily a daily thing. It's mostly when we need it, which is a lot of the time. And I'm so glad that it all ended before fentanyl, because I'm sure we would have tried to mix it or something, and I probably wouldn't be here today. But that is my story. It's my story of my first overdose, and anyone out there who is struggling with addiction, who's hurting, who's in pain, just remember there's other people like that. And my life's good now. It's great. I've got a great job. My kids are 13 and 16, thriving, they're doing good in school. My son's learning the guitar and following my footsteps musically. And loves his Kansas City Chiefs, who just won the Super Bowl. Even though I'm a Niners fan, he still loves the Chiefs. And I've gotten to watch him grow up. God, he's a good kid. My daughter, she's got some things to figure out, but she's gonna make it. I believe in her. Yeah, like every 16-year-old, they go through that. 16-year-old girls, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. They go through that awkward thing, but for the past about 10 years, I've been trying my hardest, you know, my second shot at life, third shot at life, probably fourth or fifth, compared to some crap that we did in college. I'm just glad that I'm here. I can provide and try to give these kids a good life. Hit that subscribe button if you guys want to. Bell and notification. We'll be talking a lot more about this. I'll tell you guys about my third. Well, I mean, I want this to help people. We're gonna get real. We are. There's gonna be some stories that are told. I believe that every living person is a story that when they die, their story ends and nobody ever reads the book again. So when I go to customers' houses and stuff with my job, and I see like a not World War II, because most of them are gone, but like a Korean War vet or something like that, I try to soak in as much as I can from them, because it's a story, you know. It's beautiful, and they love telling it because I mean they lived it. Well, I'm gonna tell mine. It's not gonna be linear. The chapters are gonna be everywhere, but we'll tell my story at least whatever we can, and maybe if it helps one person. If I make 100 videos, and out of that 100 videos I help one person in one video, it'll be worth it. If I have 1,000 people criticizing and talking shit, but one person gets help, it'll mean the world to me. So, you guys have a good rest of your day. Have a wonderful time. Live life to the fullest. And if you're struggling through addiction right now, struggling through suicidal thoughts or anything like that, just remember one thing that I can tell you right now. There's so many beautiful things I would have missed out on. From my suicide attempt in high school to my 2 drug overdoses and the time that I car surfed on top of a car going 100 and that ended up in a ditch. It's about 4 times I've almost kicked the bucket, bit the big one. And oh God, I would have missed out on so much. So much. It gets better. It always does. It really does. I promise you. And I'm not here to try to make excuses for you. I'm not here to try to tell you. I know you've probably heard it from everybody. I'm just saying from life experience, if you can, once you've hit the bottom, once you've hit rock bottom, the only way to go is up. Maybe you haven't hit bottom yet. Maybe it gets a little worse. But at some point, there's a bottom. There's a bottom to every situation, every life situation. There's a bottom. There really is. And you can't go past the bottom. But once you get there and you realize that you're there, then you start looking around for the tools around you, the rope, the ladder, the climbing picks, whatever you can find that helps you out in your journey. The only way to go is up. And if you only get up so far and you get kicked right back down to the bottom, just turn around and try a different tool. Maybe the rope didn't work. It takes a strong person to just climb a rope. Maybe the little pick things don't work. Maybe there's a cliff and those don't work. It takes a lot of upper body strength to use one of those to climb out of a hole. And maybe you picked the ladder right off the bat because it was the easiest path, and up so far the rungs are broken. You fall back down. Maybe you need multiple tools, so when you get to a certain point, you have to use one other than the other. You never know until you try. Whether you get kicked back down several times, you just keep climbing. Grab another tool or grab all of them. Just keep climbing. Determination is the only thing that gets you out of that hole. And it gets so much better. It gets so much sweeter. And there is no drug out there that can compare to the sweetness in life that you will experience once you climb up. No drug. No drug compares to that first lick my son played on the guitar. There's no drug that compares to that. No drug compares to the first time I took my daughter out in the Durango and let her drive around out in the country and see the joy on her face. No drug compares to that. Watching them open their presents every Christmas, being happy. Nothing compares to that. No drug. No nothing. Nothing at all. And if you haven't gotten to there in your life, if you're a parent who's still letting the drugs and addiction control you, I challenge you to do one thing, just one thing. Even if you're on drugs at the time. I challenge you to try it sober, but even if you're on drugs at the time, step back, really look at your child, whether they're wandering diapers, running around, whether they're outside playing a sports game, and really think, really think. I mean, just watching your kids in diapers, running around, picking things up, learning. Their minds are sponges. They're soaking all this world knowledge in. Just watch how their mind works. Watch their eyes. Love on them. See how bright they get when you love on them. And tell me that feeling you get right here. Or when your son plays football or something, or basketball and scores a goal. Bouncing the ball and running at the same time. That's crazy. Getting an A on their test. Coming home being happy because they passed a test or something. Or they're listening to a song that they love. Ask them to explain that song to you. Why do you like it so much? And listen to them as they talk about it. It's amazing. Feel it here. And realize there's no drug in your life that compares to that. None. Yeah, drugs can make you euphoric. They can make you feel a whole lot better, but nothing makes you feel as good as that. Now, my dogs, you can probably hear them. Why are you guys just suddenly come over getting excited, huh? Huh? They've been laying down this whole time. Stop it. Look at these. Look at these rascals. Look at these rascals down here. They're telling me it's time to stop. They need some loving on. All right. Hit that subscribe button for more. See you guys later. Have a good one.